It was in the winter of 1924, amidst the salt-crusted silence and decaying grandeur of the Newburyport Historical Society, that the blasphemy truly began. To speak of the artifact is to invite a certain psychic contagion, for it was no product of any terrestrial forge known to the annals of human metallurgy. It was a tiara, a singular, hideous crown of a gold so pale and strangely luminiferous that it seemed to belong to the lightless depths of a sunless sea rather than the sun-drenched markets of men. Its geometry was an affront to Euclidean reason, possessing curves and angles that suggested a provenance far removed from the three-dimensional world of our common experience. Upon its surface were etched bas-reliefs of such grotesque and batrachian nature that the eye instinctively recoiled. Figures of fish-like men and frog-like monstrosities engaged in rites of such unutterable depravity that the very soul felt stained by their observation. This was the Innsmouth gold, the legacy of the Marsh family and their dark pacts with the things that dwell beneath the waves, and its presence in the dusty halls of Newburyport was a secret kept with trembling hands and whispered prayers. The thief, a man of singular moral vacuity named Silas Vance, did not know the history of the object he sought. He knew only that it was gold, and that gold, in the roaring decadence of the 1920s, was the only god worth serving. He had heard rumours of the Innsmouth treasure from a half-mad sailor in a waterfront dive in Arkham, and with the cunning of a predator he had tracked the tiara to its resting place in the Society's vaults. On a night when the fog rolled in from the Atlantic like a shroud for the living, Vance broke the seals of the Society. The air within the vault was thick with the scent of brine and ancient rot, a smell that seemed to emanate from the very walls. When his lantern light first struck the tiara, he felt a momentary vertigo, a sensation of being pulled downward into an abyss of cold, crushing pressure. But the greed in his heart was a sturdier thing than his sanity, and he snatched the crown, feeling a peculiar oily warmth beneath his fingers that made his flesh crawl. Vance fled the shadow-haunted streets of Newburyport for the glittering, cacophonous sprawl of New York City. There, amidst the jazz and the neon, he believed he could disappear. He sought out a fence of high-end antiquities, a man who asked no questions but possessed a keen eye for the unique. Thus, the tiara passed from the hands of a common thief into the possession of Letitia Vandermeer, a socialite of immense wealth and even greater vanity. Letitia was a woman of the lost generation, seeking ever-new sensations to fill the hollow ache of a life spent in pursuit of the ephemeral. When she first beheld the tiara in the velvet-lined room of the fence, she felt not horror, but an inexplicable magnetic pull. It was as if the object had been waiting for her, a piece of a puzzle she had not known she was solving. The purchase was made in secret, for Letitia desired to unveil the piece at the Solstice Gala of the New York elite, a gathering of the city's most decadent and influential figures. She took the tiara to her mansion on the Upper East Side, a place of marble and silk that now felt strangely inadequate. As she sat before her vanity mirror, the tiara resting on the mahogany surface, she noticed that the light in the room seemed to bend toward it. The air grew heavy and humid, smelling of salt and something more primal, something that stirred memories of a time before the first ape stood upright. When Letitia first placed the tiara upon her brow, the sensation was not one of cold metal, but of a living, pulsing embrace. It fit her skull with a precision that was unnerving, as if it had been moulded to her very bone structure. In that moment, a subtle change occurred. The reflection in the mirror seemed to shift. Her eyes, normally a sharp, aristocratic blue, appeared to bulge slightly, their pupils dilating into dark, unblinking pools. She felt a thrumming in her ears, a rhythmic sound like the beating of a great heart beneath the earth, or the surging of a tide against a distant, forgotten shore. As the weeks progressed toward the night of the gala, the tiara's influence began to manifest with a terrifying biological inevitability. Letitia found she could no longer bear the dry air of her apartments. She spent hours submerged in her oversized marble bathtub, the water chilled to a temperature that would have been lethal to any normal human. Her skin, once porcelain and flawless, took on a peculiar waxy sheen, and a faint greenish hue began to mottle her neck and shoulders. Her diet shifted from the refined delicacies of the city to raw, pungent things, fish that she consumed with a ferocity that frightened her servants. But it was the dreams that were the most transformative. Each night, as the tiara rested on her nightstand, its pale gold shimmering in the moonlight, Letitia was transported. She was no longer in New York. She was drifting through the cyclopean ruins of a city beneath the sea. Yihantley, the name whispered in her mind like a prayer and a curse. She saw the great basalt pillars, the phosphorescent growths that illuminated the deep-sea trenches, and the squamous, rugose inhabitants who moved with a grace that mocked the clumsy motions of land-dwellers. She saw her ancestors, not the Vandermeers of New York, but a lineage that stretched back to the dark waters off the coast of Massachusetts, a bloodline tainted by the shadow over Innsmouth. She realized, with a mixture of dread and a burgeoning ecstatic pride, that she was not merely wearing the tiara. She was reclaiming her birthright. The physical reshaping of her person became more pronounced. The geometry of the tiara, as it sat upon her head for longer and longer intervals, was literally moulding her skull. Her forehead began to recede, her jaw to broaden and flatten, and her neck developed strange rhythmic folds that pulsed with her breathing. Her eyes grew wider, the lids seemingly unable to close, giving her a permanent staring expression of ancient, cold intelligence. Her friends and associates noticed the change, of course, but in the hedonistic frenzy of the 20s, her eccentricity was dismissed as a new, daring fashion, the Innsmouth look, some joked, little knowing the cosmic horror they were mocking. The night of the solstice gala arrived, a sweltering evening where the humidity of the city seemed to mimic the oppressive atmosphere of the deep. Letitia Vandermeer prepared herself with a ritualistic intensity. She donned a gown of shimmering iridescent scales that caught the light like the skin of a deep-sea predator. And finally she placed the tiara upon her head. This time there was no resistance. The metal seemed to merge with her flesh, the points of the crown sinking into her scalp without drawing blood. She felt a surge of power, a connection to the vast dark oceans that cover the majority of the globe, and a profound contempt for the fragile air-breathing creatures who inhabited the dry land. As she entered the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, a hush fell over the assembly. She was a vision of alien beauty, a creature of the abyss walking among the elite of Manhattan. Her movements were fluid, undulating, as if she were swimming through the very air. Those who looked too closely into her eyes felt a sudden, inexplicable terror, a sense of being small and insignificant before a power that predated the stars. The music of the jazz band seemed to transform in her ears, the frantic rhythms of the drums becoming the booming of the surf against Devil Reef, the wail of the saxophones, the cry of the deep ones as they rose to the surface. Throughout the evening, Letitia did not speak. She moved through the crowd like a shark through a school of minnows. She felt the call of the water, a pull so strong it was like a physical tether. The Hudson River, that dark, turgid vein of the city, was calling to her. It was not the river she sought, but the ocean beyond, and the cities that lay beneath the shelf where her true kin waited. The memories were no longer dreams, they were her reality. She remembered the taste of the salt, the pressure of the depths, the cold, eternal peace of the abyss. As the clock struck midnight, the transformation reached its zenith. The tiara began to glow with a sickly phosphorescent light, illuminating the ballroom with a hue that was not of this earth. Letitia's skin began to crack and peel, revealing a damp, greyish-green surface beneath. A low, guttural croak escaped her throat, a sound that was neither human nor animal, but something primordial and foul. The guests recoiled in horror, their screams echoing off the gilded ceilings, but Letitia did not hear them. She saw only the path to the water. She fled the gala, her iridescent gown tearing as her body shifted and swelled. She ran through the streets of New York, a monstrous, half-formed thing that moved with a speed and agility that defied her distorted frame. The few late-night pedestrians who saw her would later speak to the police of a giant upright fish or a demon from the pits. But their testimonies were dismissed as the delusions of the intoxicated. She reached the banks of the Hudson, where the water was black and churned with the city's filth. To Letitia, however, it was the most beautiful sight she had ever beheld. It was the threshold to her true home. She stood on the edge of the pier, the tiara now a permanent part of her anatomy, its gold fused with her bone. She looked out toward the Atlantic, toward the east, where the shadows of Innsmouth and the depths of Yahantley lay waiting. With a final, triumphant leap, she cast herself into the frigid depths. The impact was not a shock, but a homecoming. As she sank, the pressure that would have crushed a human chest felt like a warm, welcoming embrace. Her lungs, long since transformed, drew in the silty water, and she found it sweeter than the thinnest air of the surface. She began to swim, her limbs powerful and sure, her unblinking eyes piercing the gloom of the riverbed. She was going home. The tiara's curse was not a punishment, but an invitation, a key to a lock that had been forged in her very blood. Behind her, the lights of New York City flickered and faded, a temporary and inconsequential spark in the vast, eternal darkness of the world. Letitia Vandermeer was no more. There was only a new daughter of Dagon returning to the fold. In the days that followed, the disappearance of the wealthy socialite became a sensation in the tabloids, a mystery that would never be solved. Her mansion was eventually sold, her belongings scattered to the winds. But in the Newburyport Historical Society, the curators spoke in hushed, fearful tones of the empty pedestal where the tiara had once sat. They knew that the gold of Innsmouth always returns to the sea, and that the blood of the deep ones never truly dies. It waits in the dark places and the forgotten lineages for the right moment to reclaim its own. And somewhere, far beneath the waves where the light of the sun has never reached, a new light began to shine, the pale, eldritch glow of a tiara worn by a queen of the abyss, as she took her place among the squamous horrors of the deep. The city of New York continued its frantic, heedless pace, unaware of the ancient shadow that had brushed against its heart. The jazz played, the skyscrapers rose, and the people lived their brief, flickering lives. But the Hudson remained, a dark and silent witness to the transformation, its waters flowing eternally toward the sea, where the things of the past wait to become the things of the future. The tiara, that blasphemous crown of non-Euclidean gold, had found its wearer, and the cycle of the Innsmouth curse had claimed another soul, dragging it down into the cold, crushing embrace of the infinite deep. There, in the Stygian gloom, the memories of the surface world faded like a dream at daybreak, replaced by the eternal rhythmic chanting of the Dagon worshippers, a sound that resonates in the very marrow of the earth, calling to all who carry the taint of the sea in their veins. The theft by Silas Vance was merely the catalyst, a momentary ripple in a pond that had been stagnant for eons. The tiara was the instrument of a cosmic inevitability, a physical manifestation of a genetic destiny that could not be denied. Letitia Vandermeer had believed she was choosing a piece of jewelry, but in truth the jewelry had chosen her, recognizing the dormant spark of the deep ones that had lingered in her family line, perhaps through some forgotten maritime ancestor who had traded more than just goods in the shadow-haunted ports of the Orient or the decaying wharves of Essex County. As the years turned into decades, the story of the socialite who walked into the river became a legend, a ghost story told in the speakeasies and later the bars of the waterfront. But for those who know the truth, for those who have seen the strange greenish gold or heard the rhythmic croaking on a foggy night, the story is a warning. It is a reminder that we are not the masters of this world, that there are powers older and vaster than humanity, and that our very bodies are but temporary vessels for legacies we cannot comprehend. The shadow over Innsmouth is not confined to a single, crumbling town. It is a dark stain that spreads through the bloodlines of the world, waiting for the touch of the deep-sea gold to awaken the horror within. And so the tiara remains, a crown for a queen of the darkness, far beneath the reach of any human diver. It sits upon a brow that was once human, but is now something much more and much less. It reflects the bioluminescent glow of the deep-sea vents, a beacon for others of its kind. The Hudson continues to flow, the Atlantic continues to churn, and the great cold heart of the ocean beats on, indifferent to the petty dramas of the land-dwellers, secure in the knowledge that eventually all things return to the water. The curse of the tiara is the curse of the earth itself, the inevitable return to the primal, the squamous, and the eternal. In the silent, pressurized halls of Yahantley, Letitia, if that name still holds any meaning in the lightless depths, presides over a court of nightmares. Her skull, now fully reshaped by the tiara's eldritch geometry, is a testament to the power of the great old ones. She remembers the galas, the silk dresses, and the laughter of New York as one remembers a fever dream, distant and nonsensical. Her reality is the cold, the salt, and the service of Dagon. She is a part of the grand, hideous design, a cog in the cyclopean machinery of the abyss. And the tiara, that pale, shimmering crown of Innsmouth gold, shines on, a blasphemous sun in a world of perpetual night, marking the triumph of the ancient over the modern, the deep over the shallow, and the monstrous over the man. The world above remains oblivious, caught in the throes of its own fleeting concerns. But the scholars of the occult, the keepers of forbidden lore, and the few who have glimpsed the true nature of the Innsmouth gold know better. They look at the sea with a new kind of dread, seeing not a resource or a playground, but a vast, hungry maw that has already swallowed a part of their world. They know that the tiara was not the only artifact, that there are other pieces of that non-Euclidean gold scattered across the globe, each one a ticking clock, a silent summons to the deep. In the end, the story of Letitia Vandermeer is a story of the fragility of the human form and the terrifying persistence of the alien. It is a chronicle of a descent that was also an ascent, a transformation from a creature of the dust to a sovereign of the deep. The Hudson River, once a mere waterway for commerce, became a portal to the infinite, a bridge between the mundane and the monstrous. And as the waves lap against the piers of Manhattan, they carry with them a faint, rhythmic sound, a pulse, a heartbeat, a call. It is the sound of the tiara, vibrating with the power of the abyss, reminding us that the sea never truly gives up its own, and that the shadow over Innsmouth is as long as the history of the world itself. The legacy of the Marsh family, the pacts of the esoteric order of Dagon, and the strange, distorted lives of those who dwell in the shadow-haunted town are all woven into the gold of the tiara. It is a physical manifestation of a cosmic truth, that we are not alone, and that which we consider human is but a thin veneer over a much older, much darker reality. Letitia's transformation was not a singular event, but a symptom of a larger, more terrifying process, the slow, inexorable reclamation of the earth by its original inhabitants. As the decades pass, perhaps another thief will find another piece of the gold. Perhaps another socialite, seeking a new thrill, will place a cursed object upon her brow, and the cycle will begin anew. The geometry of the artifacts will reshape the flesh, the memories of the underwater cities will flood the mind, and the call of the water will prove irresistible. For the gold of Innsmouth is not just a treasure, it is a contagion, a psychic and biological parasite that seeks out the hidden taints in the human bloodline and brings them to horrific, squamous fruition. In the archives of the Newburyport Historical Society, there is a file, hidden away in a drawer that is never opened, containing the meagre records of the theft and the subsequent disappearance of Letitia Vandermeer. There are no photographs of the tiara, only sketches made by a terrified curator who later took his own life. The sketches show a crown that seems to change shape as one looks at it, its curves defying the laws of perspective. It is a thing that should not exist, a product of a mind or minds that perceive the universe in ways we cannot hope to understand. And yet it does exist. It exists in the depths of the Hudson, in the trenches of the Atlantic, and in the nightmares of those who have felt its pull. It exists as a reminder that the world is much larger and much older than we dare to imagine, and that the things we think we have conquered are merely waiting for their time to return. The tiara's curse is the curse of knowledge, the realization that we are but a temporary occupant of a world that belongs to the deep, and that our very bodies are subject to the whims of forces that view us with a cold, fishy indifference. So, when the fog rolls in from the sea and the smell of salt and decay fills the air, think of Letitia Vandermeer. Think of the woman who wore the crown of the abyss and found her true home in the dark, crushing depths. And remember that the gold of Innsmouth is still out there, waiting in the shadows waiting for the next soul to claim it and be claimed by it in return. The sea is vast, the sea is old, and the sea never forgets. The shadow over Innsmouth is not a memory. It is a presence, a lurking horror that waits just beneath the surface, ready to rise again and reclaim the world that was once its own. The final image of the socialite, as she stood on the pier, is one of both horror and a strange, terrible beauty. In that moment, she was the bridge between two worlds, the point where the mundane met the monstrous. The tiara, glowing with its sickly light, was the crown of her transformation, the seal of her new identity. As she leaped, she was not falling into death, but into a life more vivid and eternal than anything she had known on land. She was becoming a part of the great dark rhythm of the ocean, a participant in the ancient rites of the deep ones. The Hudson River, for all its filth and noise, became the path to a kingdom of basalt and phosphorescence, a place where the stars are not points of light in the sky, but glowing organisms in the deep-sea dark. There, Letitia Vandermeer reigns, a queen of the squamous and the rugose, her human past a forgotten whisper in the booming surf of her new reality. The tiara's curse is complete, and the gold of Innsmouth has returned to the source, carrying with it another soul to swell the ranks of the Dagon worshippers. And in the silence of the night, when the city of New York is asleep, one can sometimes hear it, a low, rhythmic thrumming, like the beating of a great heart beneath the waves. It is the sound of the abyss, the sound of the tiara, and the sound of the shadow that never truly leaves. It is the call of the deep, and it is a call that eventually all who carry the taint must answer. The tiara is waiting, the water is waiting, and the great old ones in their cyclopean cities beneath the sea are waiting most of all. The story of the tiara is a testament to the fact that some things are meant to remain buried, some treasures are meant to stay lost, and some histories are better left unread. For once the seal is broken, once the gold is touched, there is no turning back. The transformation begins, the memories return, and the path to the river becomes the only path left to walk. Letitia Vandermeer found this out too late, or perhaps in her own dark way she found it out just in time. The crown of the abyss is not for the faint of heart, but for those who are willing to embrace the horror and find their place in the eternal, sunless deep. The Newburyport Historical Society remains, a crumbling monument to a past that refuses to stay dead. The vaults are still there, the secrets are still kept, and the curators still whisper in the shadows. They know that the tiara was just one of many, that the legacy of Innsmouth is far-reaching and deep-seated. They know that the gold will always find a way back to the sea, and that the blood will always answer the call. And they know that somewhere in the dark waters off the coast, the things that were once men and women are waiting, their unblinking eyes fixed on the surface, waiting for the next piece of the gold to fall into their hands. The Jazz Age, with all its glitter and noise, was but a momentary distraction from the ancient cold reality of the cosmos. The tiara of Innsmouth was a reminder of that reality, a piece of the abyss that found its way into the heart of the modern world and left a trail of madness and transformation in its wake. Letitia Vandermeer's descent into the Hudson was not an end, but a beginning, a new chapter in the long, dark history of the shadow over Innsmouth. And as the waves continue to crash against the shore, They carry with them the echoes of that history, a song of salt and sorrow, of gold and greed, and of the eternal squamous horror that waits beneath the waves. The city of New York, in its arrogance, believes it has conquered the elements, that its steel and stone are a match for the forces of nature. But the Hudson knows better. The river knows that it is but a conduit for the older powers, a vein that leads to the heart of the world. And the Tiara knows better. The Tiara knows that the flesh is weak, that the mind is fragile, and that the only thing that truly lasts is the gold, the cold, pale, non-Euclidean gold of the deep. It is a crown that outlasts kings, a treasure that outlives empires, and a curse that never, ever truly ends. Thus, the tale of the Tiara's curse concludes not with a whimper, but with the booming of the surf and the rhythmic chanting of the deep. It is a story of a woman who sought a new sensation and found an ancient destiny, of a thief who sought a fortune and found a nightmare, and of a world that thinks it is safe, but is merely drifting on the surface of an infinite and hungry abyss. The shadow over Innsmouth is long, and it reaches far beyond the borders of a single decaying town. It reaches into the heart of the city, into the blood of the elite, and into the very soul of anyone who dares to look too closely at the pale, shimmering light of the deep-sea gold. Letitia Vandermeer is gone, but the tiara remains. It sits upon her brow in the lightless halls of Innsmouth, a beacon for the faithful and a warning for the wise. And the Hudson River flows on, its dark waters carrying the secrets of the city and the secrets of the deep, eternally moving toward the sea where the great old ones dream, and where the things of the past wait to become the things of the future. The curse is eternal, the transformation is inevitable, and the gold is always, always calling.